Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. In our journey through history, let's explore one of the most celebrated and infamous buildings in Western history. This castle has stood for over 9 centuries in England, serving as a great fortress, a home for kings and noblemen, and even a prison and execution chamber. It has come to symbolize the people of England, and many historians see this fortress as the prototype of a medieval castle. Let's go back on a journey through the history of England by exploring its most famous castle, the Tower of London. Now, we have to clear something up from the start. The Tower of London is not in itself one lone tower, but rather a connected group of fortresses. But the oldest and most famous of these is what's known as the White Tower, built in the late 11th century during the reign of William the Conqueror and his son William II on the site of an old Roman fortification in London. This tower would become the symbol of English power on the Tower complex and also a place of bloodshed. Now, in the High Middle Ages, kings added other structures to the Tower complex, making it into a strong fortification to protect the city of London, the most important city in England and the eventual capital of the British Empire, from invaders. The complex included its own personal guard and even a financial mint. Of course, the Tower was most famous for its role as a prison and an execution chamber. While it was not always the dark and lawless prison that legend has explained, it held a number of famous figures in history, such as Edward IV, who was killed in the Tower in the 1470s during the War of the Roses. Similarly, when Sir Thomas More denied the authority of King Henry VIII after the king recycled through several wives, he was imprisoned and eventually executed in the Tower in the 1530s. Henry himself had 2 of his wives put to death in the Tower several years later. And of course, Guy Fawkes, the doomed lead conspirator in the Gunpowder Plot of 1605, was held and executed in the Tower after his failed attempt to destroy the English Parliament. Even in the modern era, the Tower served the English in this way, as several German spies were killed there during World War I. Today, the Tower remains largely a historical landmark, but even as its function has become much more like a museum than a fortress, it still to this day captures the mystique of nearly 1,000 years of English history. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.